Hey GlamFam, Linwood here with my beautiful wife Allison.
Hey.
And today we're going to be showing how to do some box braids on her hair. She has already shampooed it and blow dried it out for me, so that makes life a little easier. Her hair is kind of stacked in the back, so we're going to be working with a shorter length back here. So I'll be showing you guys a couple of different things I do to help grip hair back in that area. And then from there, we're going to get into this. I'm going to show you guys some of the basics of how I do it. And then from there, we'll kind of skip in and show you like parting techniques as we go, things like that. We are using some leftover hair that we have around the house. So pretty much for us, I think it should be enough for me to do her whole head, but we're going to see. So I'll show you what we're using.
I hope so.
We have this hair here, which is the Q pre-stretch braiding hair. It's 28 inches of hair. So there's 3 bundles in this pack. And then I've got another pack that has just 1 bundle in it, but 28 inches is hecka long and ain't nobody got time for that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this hair in half and then stretch it again. So I'll show you guys how to stretch the hair on this video as well, and then from there we'll get it braided into Allison's hair. So I'm gonna be doing, I'd say, like small to medium sized braids, and that way I feel like there's enough hair to stretch and last. Usually if you're doing jumbo braids, you need a lot more hair. So when you're low on hair, go smaller with your braids, not bigger. Everyone thinks to go bigger. You want to go smaller. It allows you to use less hair and still make it blend while still looking like you've got a full head of hair there. I know it doesn't make sense logically, but somehow it makes sense with physics. I don't know how, it just works. When I tell you guys, I'm a pro at taking yes, at taking like next to no hair and making it stretch and work, or having people where they come in with like half a pack of hair and they're like, I want to sew in. Like, I find ways to make it happen. I've been doing it for, Lord, 2 decades. Lord, anyway, so let's go ahead and dive into this video. Alright, so we're going to start with the bundle hair here. And let me see here. I'm just going to turn it this way so that way we can not have the camera focusing on faces because it'll act up. And then from there, I'm going to go halfway through, just like this here. And we're going to cut this hair in half before I even separate it. And that way, it just kind of saves on any mess or confusion. No stress whatsoever. From there, I can just slide that right on off of there, and our hair is free and loose. Now, this hair does taper on this end here, but now that I cut it, it's not over here. So I'm just going to gradually pull some pieces, and we just want to kind of break that up some so we don't have a blunt line in there. So I'm just going to do this, and then I'll speed it up as I go. Now we're just going to continue this process until I can see like most of the straight sections have kind of been broken up. I just don't want it to be super obvious that this was pre-stretched on one end and not on the other. So I'm just kind of breaking it up so that way we have a bit of a differed effect with the ends here, so it begins to taper down as well. So I'm just looking for areas that still look heavy and blunt, and I'm just kind of lightly pulling in small sections with that, so that way it ends up very diverted and uneven. Alright, and I think we can work with that pretty well. So you guys can see how it begins to taper down there. And then I'm just going to brush this out some. And that way you can see how it still tapers on the opposite end. Clearly it tapers better here, but you know, we're doing what we can. We're making miracles happen, so yeah. And we still have a pretty good length of hair, so even when I throw this on Allison here, when we're working with it, it still comes down to, I'd say, about bra strap length. So we should be good to go there. From the top, it'll come down to just past the shoulder, so no major ordeals there. Thanks for tolerating me slapping this against your face. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn Allison around and we'll get her parted out. Alright, so you guys can kind of see here how this hair is falling. I'm just going to go in and part straight across the nape, and we're going to start off with these straight partings all the way across until I get up to about her parietal ridge up here. So once I get up past the ears, then from there we'll start going from the front hairline all the way across. Just so you guys know, if you've never done any type of box braiding before, the nape always goes the quickest, and it gives you false hope that everything else is going to go fast, and then you get up to everything else and you instantly become depressed when you do that first row and realize this is taking forever. Then once you feel like finally I'm finished, I got up to this top part of the head, for some reason this top part takes infinity years to do. Don't ask me why, but yeah, usually I do my partings a little bit larger in the back, just so that way the braids don't end up super bulky and you don't end up with how can I put it, you don't end up with too much work on your hands and using up all of your hair that you've got. So because her hair is a little shorter, I'm gonna have to go slightly smaller with her partings back here. We're gonna use some Shine and Jam, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and lay that on her hair here. Now this helps out with grip, but it also helps out with keeping her hair neatly in the braid without those ends wanting to slide out and all that. It gives it some grip to the artificial hair as well. And I'm just going to use it along here because I've got some excess on my fingers, and it'll help to put that hair up and out of the way. So right now it's about a 1/2 inch section. And then I'm just going to take my duckbill clip here, pin this hair over and out of the way. I love these clips because they hold nice and secure. Actually, I think I want to pin it up and out of the way so that way the tail of that clip is not getting in my way. And the extra hair that's hanging over, that's where I'm going to go ahead and use my butterfly clips, just like that. Now I'm going to take a small amount of hair, and it's important to note that however thick it is here, your braid is going to be double that thickness because it's going to be folded over. So a lot of times with single braids, if you take it and spin it, that'll give you the size of the braid there. So like I said, I'm going to go a little bit smaller. We're doing small to medium sized braids. And then from there, we can go ahead and go on through it. Now what I like to do is I'll take that hair and I separate it out to where I've got about half of the amount of hair in this hand that I have in my other one. Then I just take it and wrap it around the larger strand and add it back together. So that way I end up with 3 equal strands. From there, I just go ahead and grip that hair just like I'm cornrowing. Just like that. And then I begin to place it down to the head. So from there, we're just going to go ahead and place it. We add our first little bit in with that first strand. I'm going to go underneath and pick up another bit with my second strand. And on my third strand in, I'm going to go ahead and pick up that extra bit of hair that's left. And then we just begin to braid right on down. Now once you have that hair locked in place, like right now I'm doing a bit slower and I'm making sure my grip is pretty tight on this hair because I don't want it to slip. But once you've got it locked in place, from there you can go ahead and loosen up a bit and speed up. Now if it's a bit more uncomfortable for your client because you're in the nape and you're pulling quite a bit and that skin's stretchy, they can just kind of hold at the base to keep it from pulling at the scalp, and that way you're still good to go there as well. So I'm going to finish out this row, and then on the next row I'll show you how to part so that way it doesn't look spacey and gapped and you still get good coverage while looking like you've got a full head of hair in these braids as well. Another important thing to note is as you get down to the ends, because this hair is tapered, the thing that's nice to me is that it holds together a bit better than you would typically with, how can I put it, with like blunt hair, things like that. So you can kind of braid this hair down and not have to worry so much about it trying to unravel on you, because the hair holds together rather nicely when it's got a tapered end. It doesn't, like you drop it and it doesn't instantly try to come unraveled. So if you dip it in hot water, it holds together much better than if you just leave the hair blunt on the ends. You can also take it and roll it. It just depends on what you're wanting to see out of it. Some people braid all of the braids in like a few big braids. There we go. In a few big braids, and then from there they'll go ahead and leave it crinkled on the end. So it's up to you whether you want to roll it and dip it, if you want to burn it on the ends to seal it, or if you want to dip it in hot water and leave it straight. If you want to braid it and dip it, it's all up to you. All right, so we've gone past our first row here, and I'm now on to the second row. And usually because the hair is shorter in here and the ends are so blunt, I like to go with a smaller box. It allows you to more easily blend that hair in, and it also gives the braid a little bit more to grip to. Now as the hair gets longer as we move up, I can go with a slightly larger box, and it will still give me a good enough amount of hair to grip, and it'll still be something where I can proportion it out without the ends trying to stick out, because they won't be so bluntly cut as we move up the head either. Now on the second row, and on all your rows really, what's super important to keep that hair looking thick and not have it looking spacey and all that is you want to go in and brick lay. And so what that means is instead of doing your next set of part lines perfectly on top of the last ones, you want to make sure that your parting is coming down like the center of the braid. So basically this will fall to the side and fill in that space. This next braid will fall right in between these two here and fill in that space there. So instead of it looking like a straight line going through her head, this helps to add to fullness and make it look more just more full without you having to add in a ton of hair to get that fullness there. It's kind of one of those things that makes things look a lot more neat and professional. So I'm going to go ahead and begin to do this braid and lock it in place. And then from there, hopefully that way you guys will be able to see exactly what I'm referring to with this. All right, so that way you guys can kind of see plainly there how this row of braids falls perfectly in between. The next row of braids will do the same thing, and it just nicely fills out. So basically, instead of your braids looking like this, they end up looking like this here. So hopefully you can kind of get that visualization of what we're looking for. Another thing you want to keep in mind anytime you're doing box braids, single braids, things like that, is the way that you braided them, which is down. Let them stay like that for about a week, and advise whoever's hair you're braiding not to pull it up into a high ponytail or a tight ponytail for about a week. So this baby should freely move around in a circle on its own with no pain or discomfort before the person goes pulling it up into a high ponytail, a bun, any type of tight ponytail, because you don't want to cause any degree of hair loss. If you're doing this too early, it'll cause the bumps around the sides, it'll cause hair loss, it'll cause pain and issues with the scalp, and that's the last thing that you want. That is with any size braid. Wait at least a week before you go putting in a ponytail. I don't care what they do at the braiding shops, it's wrong. Okay? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and continue braiding. Once we get up to the higher point where we gotta change up our braiding design, I'll show you what we do at that point. All right, GlamFam, so now that we've gotten up to the parietal ridge area of the head, so just so you guys kind of know for reference, like we're up at that rounded portion of the head here, like where a man would begin to bald, essentially. This is the braiding pattern. Let me have you lean forward real quick, sweetheart. Thank you. This is the braiding pattern. I just wanted you guys to kind of see how it fills out with me doing those boxes in there. The size that we have been doing them. Now, as I get up here, usually I try to go a little bit smaller with the box sizes, but I also change the direction. So instead of going all the way around the head like we were doing before, now from here, this is where I begin to kind of close up that gap. So I'll usually pick a point and begin to come across the head like this. And we just continue that bricklaying pattern. So as I'm doing that, I can then go ahead and begin to kind of clean up and lay everything down. And this also allows you to get, with the smaller box size, it allows you to get less of a noticeable differentiation between their hair and the added in hair, especially if that hair is braided in, you're working with a limited amount of hair. Now, if you've got more hair to spare, or if your client is not freshly cut, it's a little bit easier to blend. But in this instance, we don't want to be trying to thin out her ends to make some braids blend. It's not worth all of that. We'll just go ahead and go smaller with her boxes up here. And you can see, like, even though I went ahead and went with a larger box size back here where they were a bit more spaced out, it does not leave a noticeable change in thickness there, and it still gives a nice full look to that hair where you're not seeing scalp through there. So we're just going to go ahead and come right in between our portions, and we'll end up making our boxes fall continually right in between those spaces. But you can see, just with going with a little bit more narrow of a height here, it ends up giving you a smaller space. So I hope that makes sense. I'll go ahead and braid that way you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Also, currently we are on our second bundle of hair, so we still have 2 bundles left over to work with. But as I stated before, this area up here tends to take a little bit more time and a little bit more hair than some of the other areas. So I don't want to get my hopes up and feeling like I can just go crazy with using up hair, because it doesn't always work that way. But yeah, this way you can kind of see how this hair is beginning to fall and fill in. And see how with that smaller amount of hair, you don't see the separation between her hair and the hair that we've added in. So that's part of why we go with the smaller parting sizes up top, and it allows us to more easily blend when people have those strong, blunt haircuts in there. So just so you know, these are little tips and secrets that will kind of help you out if you're trying to save on hair and you've got a blunt haircut that you're working with. Now, if that client has naturally straight hair, a lot of times you're still going to have issues with that hair trying to come loose, because that's just the nature of the beast. So something to be cautious of. A lot of times if they're needing a trim and they have extremely straight hair, I wouldn't do a ton of really straight cutting, maybe a razor cut, because it gives a little bit more of a jagged edge. And that way you're able to more easily keep those ends nice and softened while still taking care of the split ends, because it really doesn't make a lot of sense to do protective styling if you're not going to have your hair healthy going into a protective style. That being said, this is why we're making sure that hair is as healthy as possible, make sure it's well conditioned, all that going into it. And it's also why we're not going to be pulling extremely tight on the head of hair, because ain't nobody got time to be taking out hair with their braids. Isn't that right, Alize?
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I forgot to mention, when we're doing braids like this, it's very important that you keep your partings as clean as possible. A lot of times I see where people are not careful and they're picking up little strands of hair from kind of everywhere, which is why I like these clips here. It helps to kind of hold some of that hair out of the way. It's also why occasionally, if there's a lot of flyaways, you'll see me put product on the hair that I'm not braiding as well. What it does is it allows you to more easily control the hair. So the hair in the braid is the hair that's supposed to be. It's crazy because you can pull a good amount of hair and it doesn't usually hurt somebody, but you get to pull in 1 or 2 strands, and that's honestly more painful than it is for you to pull a large amount of hair. So whenever you're doing braids and things like that, you want to make sure that you are keeping your partings nice and clean and that you don't have traveling hairs from areas where they're not supposed to be going into the braids. It causes a lot of discomfort for the individual whose hair you're braiding, and you just don't want to see a lot of issues with that. So this is why you see these part lines so cleaned up, so neat and tidy, because you want to make sure that you're not snatching hair out or causing any kind of discomfort. And that's not something that usually lessened as the braids are in. If you've got strands of hair that are in places they shouldn't be, that pain continues while the braids are in. So that's something to kind of bear in mind if you're doing braids on yourself or someone else. It's just making sure that you're working in very neat, clean sections. It may seem a little tedious, but it makes your work look much more professional, and it also ensures that whoever's hair you're braiding is not going to be in pain or in discomfort from your braids, because that's not really a good look, and it makes people less likely to want to sit down and have you braid their hair. All right, so we've gotten up to this top portion of the head here, and I could just continue going, but I already know Alison likes to part on this side over here. So what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to change my parting pattern, and instead of leaving it to where we're going in a pattern like this across here, I'm going to go ahead and straighten out and just bring it in straight rows going along this way. That way this side will fall on her right, she'll have her part, and then the rest of it will flow to the other side. So it'll basically be straight partings going horizontally from here. So just so you guys can kind of visualize, I know some people still don't quite get it unless they see it. Let's go ahead and part this section off. We're going to take the same size subsections and just part them right on across here. I want to match them up as well as I can with the partings that we have back here, just so that way everything looks nice and congruent. Place a bit of product on this loose hair as well as the hair above so it doesn't get in the way. And from there, we'll go ahead and begin doing our block sections out like this here. Now, of course, I was stating earlier that I consider these small to medium box braids. Alison just now was talking about some. She considers these to be micro braids or pinch braids. Ain't nothing pinch or micro about these. Micro braids are tiny. These are just small. But Alison would beg to differ. So, yeah. Alison, you got anything you want to add to that?
It's going to take just as long to take them down as it did to put them up.
You're welcome. They're going to stay nice and tight. Ain't going nowhere. You're going to wear these for the rest of your life. Okay, so now that we're finished with all of these braids, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take them in pretty good sized sections. We're going to go ahead and take these and braid them off. This is great to do if you don't have like perm rods or anything like that that you can roll it around. It just kind of gives the ends of these braids a little bit of a crinkled look and helps them to hold together. If you want it straight, you can just dip them in the water straight. If you want them curled, you got to roll them around something like a perm rod or a roller, something along that line, and then dip them. But yeah, just so that way you can kind of see. So I'm going to go ahead and braid this one just so you can see what's going on. Then I'll skip to where all of them are braided, and I'll show you how to dip them for it to be both safe and to seal the ends. Okay, so after we have Alison's hair braided up in these individual plaits, what we're going to do is wrap a towel around her neck here. I'm going to have her lean all the way back, just so that way her hair drapes over the chair. So lean back to where your back is touching the chair. That way, if there's any dripping, it drips onto the floor and not onto her skin or her shirt. So we don't want it to burn her in any way, shape, or form. At the same time, we also don't want to burn me. So I've got a towel here as well. And then we have a bowl of boiling hot water. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take these braids and dip the ends of them. We don't have to dip the whole braid in there, but definitely get those ends on in there. And then as you get them out, take the towel in your hand and just lightly squeeze so there's not a whole bunch of water dripping and all that. Let it rest until it cools, and then from there all you have to do is unbraid. Now keep in mind this water does need to be boiling hot. Boiling is 212 degrees Fahrenheit. It is just warm enough to melt and mold synthetic hair without melting it and burning it down, so to speak. So it's enough to reshape it without damaging the hair. So things to keep in mind while you're working with it. If it's not hot enough, this will not work. You also want to make sure you're working with a hair that burns well or melts well. So usually the pre-stretched hairs tend to do quite a bit better with that rather than the ones that you have to stretch out yourself. Sometimes the really cheap ones don't like to melt together as well. So it pays to pay a little bit more sometimes for your stuff. Okay, so obviously these over here are still warm. I'm gonna go ahead and turn her and give this one a feel. And this one has cooled down, so I'm gonna go ahead and unbraid it so you can see how this is looking. On these straight ends here, we'll probably go ahead and trim those because we don't want straight stragglers just kind of hanging. But this way you can see the crimped effect that you get this way. So that way it just kind of crinkles the ends like that there. So GlamFam, we've finished. I'm lowering this camera down because I want to make sure y'all can see the entirety of Alison's braids. Don't judge her for having on her robe. It's late at night and she's sleepy. At any rate, this is the braids here. Alison, you want to turn so they can see all angles? So these are small to medium sized box braids in the industry, not by Alison's standard, but that way you guys can kind of see what you're looking at here. Of course, as always, let us know what you think in the comment section down below. I'm hoping that this will make things a little bit easier for Alison on a day-to-day basis because she is in the healthcare field and still has to go to work. And ain't nobody got time to be getting up trying to slap on wigs, curling, and all that type of stuff. So hopefully this will save time. How's it feel on your scalp, all that?
I don't know. It just feels different because I haven't had braids in I don't know how long. Forever.
Okay. Any pain, anything like that though?
Nope.
Okay. You're trying to bust in. Say hi.
Hi.
Anyway, so we're gonna go manage these kids. And by manage, rough them up. Anyway, until next time, you guys, take care. God bless and stay glam. We got some things to handle. Bye, you guys.